April 1st, 1944. Dawn breaks cold and gray over RAF Glatten, England. The concrete runway glistens with moisture, reflecting the silhouettes of Boeing B-17. Flying fortresses line nose to tail like steel animals waiting to be unleashed. Inside one of them ye old pup First Lieutenant Charlie. Kulp tightens his gloves and stares through the cockpit glass at a sky that promises nothing but violence. This is his 25th mission. One more after today and he goes home. He knows better than to believe that promise. Engines roar to life. For right cyclones coughing smoke before settling into a steady thunder. Ground crews step back, hands raised. The fortress begins to roll. Kulp feels the vibration travel through the rudder pedals, through his boots, into his bones. Around him, dozens of B-17s lift into the air one by one, forming combat boxes over eastern England. Above them, the sun struggles through layered cloud, lighting aluminum wings like blades. The target is Ludwigshafen, Germany's chemical heart. The route is familiar, and that familiarity terrifies him. Every mile has been measured by flak bursts and fighter losses. As the formation crosses the English coast, oxygen masks are tested. Guns are unlocked. At 20,000 feet, the temperature drops far below freezing. Breath turns shallow. The intercom crackles with clipped voices. All business, no fear allowed. Crossing the Dutch coast, the first black puffs appear. German flak, precise, corrected. The fortress shudders as steel fragments. RIP past the fuselage. Kulp watches the horizon while the pilot fights to hold formation. A B-17 below them takes a hit, peels away trailing smoke. No parachutes. Nobody says a word. Then the fighters come. Messerschmitt Bf-109s and FW-190s slash through the bomber stream. Cannon fire stitching the sky. The air is suddenly full of motion, evasive maneuvers forbidden, formation sacred. A violent jolt throws Kulp forward. Another B-17 has drifted too close through flak smoke and confusion. Metal screams against metal. Wings collide. The fortress lurches, nose dropping. Warning lights explode across the panel. Kulp shouts corrections as control response vanishes. Outside the cockpit, something impossible is happening. Through fractured glass, he sees another bomber pressed against them, locked wing to wing, tail twisted. Fuselages grinding together at 20,000 feet over enemy territory. Neither aircraft can break free, and the formation is still flying forward. The locked bombers drift inside the combat box like a wounded animal refusing to fall. Charlie. Kulp forces his eyes off the tearing aluminum outside and back onto the instruments. Airspeed bleeding. Control surfaces unresponsive. Somewhere behind them, gunners shout damage reports that arrive too fast to process. The fortress is no longer a single aircraft. It is half of a broken machine trying to stay aloft through habit alone. Through the cockpit glass, Kulp finally sees the other plane clearly. Its nose is crushed against their left wing. Propeller bent backward like a snapped finger. He can read the faded letters on its fuselage. The proximity is so close he can see movement inside, men still at their stations, still alive. 2 crews, 20 men, bound together by chance and physics, drifting deeper into Germany. The pilot fights the yoke, muscles straining against frozen controls. Nothing responds. The aircraft is flying because the other bomber is holding it up and being dragged down in return. If either crew bails out, both planes will die instantly. Kulp understands this without being told. He presses the intercom switch, voice tight, relaying what they already know. Silence answers him. No doctrine exists for this. No checklist. No training scenario. German fighters circle, confused by the sight. A single Bf-109 dives, fires, then pulls away. The gunners return fire instinctively, but the angles are wrong. The planes are too close. One wrong burst could kill the other crew. The sky feels suddenly crowded, claustrophobic, despite its vastness. Below them, flak bursts climb again. The formation presses on toward Ludwigshafen. Bomb bay doors begin opening across the box. The mission continues. Kulp realizes, with a cold clarity, that they are still expected to drop their bombs locked to another crippled aircraft. He looks at the pilot. The pilot looks back. No words are exchanged. The bomb release is armed anyway. A violent shudder runs through both fuselages as one of the entangled propellers tears free and vanishes into cloud. The aircraft dips sharply, then steadies. For a moment, only a moment, it seems they might survive together. The airspeed creeps back just enough to hold altitude. Sweat freezes along Kulp's jaw under the oxygen mask. Then the other bomber begins to slip. Metal groans again. The pressure changes. The wing joint grinds lower, dragging them down. Kulp watches the altimeter and wind 19,000. 18,500. The pilot yells for ballast to be thrown out. Ammunition belts are shoved through hatches. Loose equipment follows. Still the descent continues. The radio crackles with distant commands meant for aircraft that can maneuver. They cannot answer. Below them, Germany grows sharper, more detailed. Fields, roads, rivers. The ground waiting patiently. The locked fortress shudders violently, and this time the motion does not stop. The locked fortress shudders violently, and this time the motion does not stop. Charlie Kulp braces his boots against the floor as gravity tilts sideways, then forward. The aircraft is no longer flying in any clean sense of the word. It is sliding through the air, held together by the other bomber's damaged wing and the fragile balance of lift. Neither was designed to share. Over the intercom, fragmented reports come in. Hydraulic pressure is gone. Elevator response is erratic. The tail gunner reports the stabilizer is partially torn away. Kulp acknowledges each call, his voice calm because it must be. Panic would spread faster than fire in this aluminum tube. The other aircraft is sagging now, its nose pulling down, dragging their left wing with it. Kulp can see the pilot inside that cockpit, helmeted head turning, eyes locked forward. They are close enough now that facial expressions are visible: tight jaws, wide eyes. No hand signals, no gestures, just two crews reading the same reality. The German fighters return. A pair of FW-190s streak past, firing short bursts. Tracers slice between the entangled fuselages, punching holes but finding no fuel tanks. The gunners fire back sparingly, terrified of hitting their accidental partner. One burst rips through the other bomber's radio compartment. The firing stops immediately. Silence again. Altitude bleeds away 17,000 feet. The temperature rises slightly, but no one notices. Kulp watches the airspeed needle tremble, hovering just above stall. The pilot eases the throttles forward. Engines straining, temperatures climbing toward red. Push too hard and the engines will seize. Pull back and both aircraft fall. Below them, the bomber stream moves on. One by one, intact B-17s release their bombs over Ludwigshafen. Distant flashes bloom on the ground, muted by altitude and cloud. The war continues without them. The fortress jolts as the other aircraft's landing gear tears loose, ripped away by airflow and stress. The wheel spins briefly beside the cockpit window before vanishing. The sudden loss of drag changes everything. The two bombers pitch sharply. Kulp is slammed against his harness. The pilot wrestles the yoke, teeth clenched, arms shaking. For a heartbeat, the wings separate an inch. Kulp's breath catches. If they break free at this speed and angle, neither aircraft will recover. They are too slow, too damaged. Separation now would be death. The metal groans again and then settles. The wings remain locked. A decision forms without discussion. Kulp reaches for the bomb release. The pilot nods once. The fortress lurches as thousands of pounds drop away. The aircraft leaps upward violently, straining against the other bombers still clinging to it. The imbalance twists both fuselages, metal screaming in protest. Inside the other plane, men are thrown against bulkheads. Kulp sees one figure tumble across a window frame. He looks away. The altimeter. The smell is unmistakable: burning insulation. Hot oil, electrical fire. Charlie Kulp turns his head toward the radio room, eyes stinging as thin gray smoke snakes forward along the ceiling. Fire at altitude is a death sentence. Fire inside a crippled aircraft locked to another bomber is something worse. The intercom erupts with voices now, urgency breaking through discipline. The radio operator is trying to smother the flames with an extinguisher that sputters and fades. The pilot calls for damage assessment, but the answer is already written in smoke. The fire is spreading, fed by torn wiring and oxygen-rich air. Kulp knows the rules. If the fire reaches the bomb bay or fuel lines, there will be no warning, just disintegration. He forces himself to stay steady, to think in steps, not outcomes. Outside, the other B-17 begins to list further. Its right wing dips, dragging their left wing with it. The two aircraft are no longer aligned. They are twisting together, like wreckage caught in a river current. Control inputs now produce delayed, unpredictable reactions. Every correction risks snapping the fragile contact that keeps them aloft. A German flak battery below finally finds the range. Black bursts detonate closer now, jolting both aircraft with concussion. Shrapnel rattles against fuselage skin. One fragment punches through the cockpit canopy, embedding in the instrument panel inches from Kulp's hand. He doesn't flinch. There is no space left for fear. The radio operator's voice comes again, strained, coughing. The extinguisher is empty. The fire is not out. Kulp relays the message forward. The pilot nods once, grim. There is only one option left, and it is unspoken separation. If they stay together, both crews die in fire. If they break free, maybe one aircraft, maybe none survives. Kulp looks again at the other cockpit, barely feet away. He can see the pilot's mouth moving, shouting orders to men Kulp cannot hear. The other bomber's nose dips sharply. Their wing grinds lower, metal tearing further. The pressure changes violently. Airspeed drops again, flirting with stall. Altitude, 14,000 feet. The pilot shouts for the crew to prepare to bail out. The words hit the cockpit like physical blows. Some men will not make it. Kulp knows that too. He switches the intercom, voice steady, instructing positions, timing, sequence. Training takes over because emotion cannot. The fire surges forward suddenly, a flash of orange reflected in the cockpit glass. Heat follows, shocking after the cold. Smoke thickens, blinding. Kulp's oxygen mask fogs instantly. Breathing becomes labor. Outside, the other bomber jerks violently downward. The wing joint screams an unearthly sound of metal surrendering. The separation is happening whether they choose it or not. The pilot shoves the yoke hard right. Engines roar. For a split second, the wings tear apart in the spray of aluminum. The world flips. The fortress drops free. Kulp is slammed against. The fortress is falling free now, no longer dragged by the dying weight of the other bomber, but betrayed by its own damage. Charlie Kulp feels the spin loosen its grip, just enough for the pilot to wrestle the nose upward. Airspeed claws back from nothing. The engines howl unevenly, one coughing smoke, another vibrating so hard it threatens to tear loose. Control returns in fragments, never whole, never reliable. The fire is still alive behind them. Smoke pours through the cockpit doorway in thick pulses. The radio room is gone, consumed by flame and darkness. Kulp reaches down, kills electrical circuits one by one, sacrificing navigation, communication, anything that feeds the fire. The aircraft dims, instruments glowing faintly in the gloom. The smell of burning insulation sharpens, stinging eyes and lungs. Over the intercom, voices call out, some shouting positions, some coughing, some already fading. The pilot orders bailouts again. One by one, crewmen move aft, disappearing into smoke and chaos. Kulp listens for parachute calls, for confirmation. He hears none. He doesn't know who has made it out, and there is no time to wonder. Altitude slips past 12,000 feet. The fortress steadies briefly, wings rocking like a wounded bird. Outside, the sky has changed. The bomber stream is gone. The escorts are gone. There is only scattered cloud and the widening geography of Germany beneath them. Fields and towns slide past with cruel clarity. Kulp recognizes none of it. A sudden jolt snaps his attention forward. The pilot slams a hand against the panel, pointing. The left wing is burning now, fuel leaking from a ruptured line. Ignited by heat and friction, flames trail backward, licking toward the fuselage. The structure cannot hold much longer. If the wing fails, there will be no recovery. Kulp knows what must be done. He doesn't wait for orders. He grabs the intercom, voice hoarse but firm, ordering remaining crew to jump immediately. No delay. No equipment. Just go. The pilot hesitates just a fraction of a second, then nods. He shoves the control column forward, trading altitude for speed, hoping to buy seconds. The fortress accelerates, shaking violently. The fire flares brighter. A shape flashes past the cockpit window, one of their own men. Tumbling clear, parachute snapping open a heartbeat later. Relief hits Kulp hard, sharp and brief. There may be others. There may not. Altitude, 9,000 feet. The pilot turns to Kulp, eyes locked. Expression unreadable behind oxygen mask and soot. The message is clear. They will ride it as long as they can, to keep the aircraft stable for anyone still inside. Another explosion tears through the fuselage, small, localized, but terrifying. The fire has reached stored ammunition. Tracers cook off, streaking wildly into the sky. The fortress becomes a floating beacon, impossible to miss. Below them, a river curves through the landscape, wide, reflective. Kulp recognizes it from maps. The Rhine, that means Western Germany. The fortress shudders as if it knows the decision has been made. Charlie Kulp clips his parachute straps with numb fingers. The motion automatic, practiced long before this day. The cockpit is thick with smoke now, rolling forward in choking waves. Every breath burns. The oxygen mask helps, but the heat is winning. The pilot holds the aircraft level by instinct alone. The left wing continues to sag, fire chewing deeper into its structure. Aluminum softens. Rivets pop in sharp, metallic cracks that echo through the fuselage. Kulp watches the airspeed too fast risks tearing the wing off. Too slow invites a stall they won't recover from. Below them, the Rhine slides past, calm and indifferent. Towns dot the riverbanks, roofs sharp and orderly. Anti-aircraft guns track the bomber but do not fire. The aircraft is already dying. There is no need. A final voice comes over the intercom, faint, distant. One of the gunners confirms he is clear. Another does not answer. Kulp waits 3 seconds. Then he turns to the pilot. Now. The pilot nods once. He trims the aircraft as best he can, hands steady despite the shaking, and reaches for his own chute. They exchange no words. There is nothing left to say. Kulp opens the cockpit hatch. The slipstream explodes inside, ripping smoke outward, tearing at his suit. Cold air slams into him like a wall. For a split second, the sky is impossibly blue, the ground terrifyingly close. He grips the frame, forcing himself not to look back at the fire consuming the wing. He jumps. The noise vanishes instantly, replaced by a rushing silence. The fortress surges upward and away as he falls, its burning wing glowing against the cloudless sky. For a heartbeat, he sees the pilot still at the controls, holding the aircraft steady even now. Then the B-17 rolls sharply left. Kulp counts 1, 2, 3 and pulls the ripcord. The parachute snaps open with a brutal jerk, stealing his breath. Above him, the white canopy blossoms, blessed and fragile. He hangs there, spinning gently, suspended between sky and earth. The fortress does not last much longer. The left wing folds completely, fire flashing bright as the aircraft cartwheels downward. The explosion comes seconds later, muted, distant, final. Debris scatters across the fields below. Smoke climbs in a thin, dark column. Kulp watches it fall, knowing that chapter is closed forever. The ground rises fast now. He can see people running, tiny figures breaking from buildings, pointing upward. He drifts toward a patchwork of fields near the riverbank. The wind carries him east, away from the water. He hits hard, rolling, the breath driven from his lungs. Pain flares through his legs, sharp but survivable. The parachute collapses beside him. For a moment, he lies still, staring at the sky he has just fallen from. Then boots pound the ground nearby. Shouts German voices. The fortress is still flying. That fact alone feels unreal. Charlie Kulp slides his arms into the parachute straps with careful, practiced movements, every motion slowed by smoke and fatigue. The cockpit vibrates violently now, the damaged wing flexing with each correction the pilot makes. Fire trails behind them like a signal flare, visible for miles. The pilot keeps his eyes forward, hands locked on the controls. He is flying for men who may already be gone. Flying for seconds. Kulp finishes tightening his harness and pauses, looking once more at the instrument panel. Airspeed unstable. All pressure nearly gone. Engine temperatures off the scale. The fortress is being held together by airflow and stubbornness. A violent shudder rips through the airframe. The left wing drops sharply, then recovers. Flames surge brighter, fed by ruptured fuel lines. Heat washes through the cockpit now, intense enough to be felt through flight suits. The oxygen system begins to fail, masks useless in smoke this thick. The intercom is silent. Kulp reaches out and grips the pilot's shoulder. The pilot glances over. No words. None are needed. They have done all they can for the others. Staying longer will help no one. Altitude, 7,500 feet. The pilot trims the aircraft just enough to hold a shallow glide, then releases the controls. For the first time since England, the yoke moves untouched. The fortress begins a slow, inevitable roll. Kulp moves to the cockpit hatch, forcing it open against warped metal. Wind and smoke explode inward, ripping at his clothing. Below, the Rhine slides past, wide and merciless. Towns and roads sharpen rapidly. German territory on forgiving ground. Kulp clips his static line with numb fingers. The aircraft bucks again, more violently this time. The wing is failing. The pilot steps up beside him. For a heartbeat, they share the narrow opening. The roar of the slipstream drowning everything else. Faces streaked with soot, eyes burning. Both men fully aware that the aircraft may not hold another 10 seconds. Kulp doesn't hesitate. He steps out into empty air. The fortress surges upward briefly as his weight leaves it, then lurches hard left. Kulp tumbles, spins, the aircraft flashing past above him, burning. Broken, still moving. The parachute snaps open with brutal force, jerking him upright. Above him, the B-17 rolls once, wing folding inward, fire blooming brighter, and then it disappears behind cloud. Kulp hangs alone in the sky, drifting downward into silence broken only by wind. Below, Germany waits. Above, the war continues without him. He does not know who survived. He does not know who didn't, and the ground is coming fast. The wind carries Charlie Kulp sideways as he descends, the parachute canopy tugging and collapsing in uneven air. Smoke still stains the sky above him, a dark smear where the fortress vanished. He twists in his harness, searching instinctively, hoping without reason to see another parachute. There is nothing, just cloud, thinning now, and the hard geometry of the ground rising fast. Rifle fire snaps upward. Sharp cracks. Tracers claw at the air beneath him. German soldiers have already spotted the falling canopy. Kulp tucks his legs, trying to reduce silhouette, knowing it makes little difference. He cannot steer far. The wind chooses for him. Fields rush up patchwork farmland broken by hedgerows and a narrow road. He hits hard, legs buckling, shoulder slamming into the earth. Pain flares white-hot, then settles into something manageable. Training again. He collapses the chute, rolls. Reaches instinctively for a sidearm that is no longer there. Silence follows, heavy and complete. Boots approach. Kulp stays still, breath shallow, listening to shouted German voices growing closer. Hands grab him roughly, hauling him upright. A rifle butt strikes his back, not hard enough to break anything, just enough to command obedience. He does not resist. Resistance would change nothing. They strip him of maps, compass, escape kit. One soldier pauses at the sight of the flight jacket insignia, then shoves Kulp forward. He stumbles, regains balance, keeps moving. The sky above is empty now. No bombers, no escorts, no trace of the machine that carried him across half a continent. Hours later or minutes, he cannot tell. He is marched into a small holding area near a road junction. Other prisoners sit there already, airmen, familiar faces, smoke-streaked, hollow-eyed. One looks up sharply when Kulp is pushed into the group. Recognition flashes. They exchange nothing but a glance, but it is enough. Someone else made it out. How many, neither knows. The question hangs between them, unanswered and unbearable. That night, Kulp is loaded onto a truck, hands bound, head lowered. The engine growls to life. As the vehicle pulls away, he looks back once, just once, toward the west, toward where England should be, where the fortress began its day whole. Somewhere behind him, in the fields or forests or clouds, the story of the other B-17 ends without witnesses. Kulp does not know if the pilot lived. He does not know if anyone else survived. What he knows is this: 2 bombers flew as one longer than physics allowed, and the cost of staying together is still being counted. The truck accelerates into the dark, and captivity closes in. The truck jolts over broken roads, each impact driving pain deeper into Charlie Kulp's shoulders and knees. His hands are numb from the rope, his throat raw from smoke and cold air. The night presses close, lit only by brief flashes of headlights through canvas slits. No one speaks. The German guards ride in silence, rifles resting across their knees, faces unreadable in shadow. By morning, Kulp is process name taken, rank noted, serial number recorded with mechanical indifference. He is issued a thin blanket and pushed into a fenced compound already crowded with airmen. Stalag Luft 3, the place smells of damp wood, boiled turnips, and resignation. He sits heavily on a bunk and finally allows himself to breathe without counting seconds. It is here, hours later, that fragments of truth begin to surface. An airman from another compound mentions seeing a burning bomber fall. West of the Rhine, another heard rumors of a mid-air collision, so severe that German civilians stopped to watch the wreckage descend. No one knows details. No one knows names. The war has a way of turning lives into incomplete sentences. Kulp listens, saying nothing. He stares at his hands, still shaking faintly, and replays the last moments over and over the locked wings. The pilot's eyes, the heat, the jump. He wonders how long the other B-17 stayed together after he left. Seconds, minutes, long enough for more men to escape. Days pass. Interrogations come and go, ineffective and predictable. Guards ask questions they already know the answers to. Kulp gives nothing beyond name, rank, serial number. At night, he dreams of metal screaming, of 2 aircraft refusing to separate, of falling without end. Then, one afternoon, a new group of prisoners arrives. Among them is a gunner from the other bomber. Recognition hits Kulp like a physical blow. The man is thinner, eyes hollow, face marked by burns along one cheek. They sit together on the edge of a bunk, speaking quietly, urgently. The gunner tells him what happened after separation. The aircraft rolled, fire consuming the wing. The pilot held it steady just long enough. More men jumped. Not all. The bomber hit the ground in flames outside a small village. German troops arrived quickly. There were survivors. There were casualties. The pilot did not make it. The word settles slowly, heavily. Kulp nods once, absorbing the weight. The image of the pilot at the hatch, steady and silent, fixes permanently in his mind. He had stayed to the last possible second, long enough for others to live. That night, lying on the hard bunk, Kulp stares at the barracks ceiling. The war continues beyond the wire missions flown. Bombers lost, names added to lists. But for him, the war has narrowed to memory and endurance. 2 bombers flew as one. They should not have survived together. But for a brief, impossible span of sky, they did. And that decision forced by chance, held by discipline, saved lives. The guard's footsteps fade down the corridor. Morning light creeps through the barracks windows at Stalag Luft 3, thin and colorless. Charlie Kulp wakes before the guard's boots announce the day. Sleep here is never complete, only pauses between memories. He lies still for a moment, listening to the quiet breathing of other men. All of them survivors of separate catastrophes bound together by wire and chance. Roll call comes. Names are shouted, numbers answered. Kulp steps forward when called, voice steady, posture automatic. Discipline remains when everything else has been stripped away. Beyond the fence, the war moves on, engines heard faintly overhead some mornings. Distant reminders that the sky is still being contested by men he will never meet. Weeks pass, then months. News filters in slowly, distorted by rumor but persistent. April 1st, 1944 becomes a date spoken carefully among airmen. The mission to Ludwigshafen, the collision, to B-17s locked together over Germany. Guards themselves mention it sometimes, shaking their heads at the impossibility of it. Even the enemy cannot deny what they saw. Kulp learns the final details piece by piece. How the 2 aircraft stayed together far longer than anyone believed possible. How gunners held fire to avoid killing their own. How the pilot of the other bomber kept control long enough for men to escape. How physics, training, and refusal to panic align for a few critical minutes and then let go. There is no medal ceremony here. No audience. No victory music. Just memory, shared quietly between men who understand what those minutes cost. In time, Kulp will go home. He will tell the story when asked, carefully, without embellishment. He will say that 2 bombers collided, that they flew together, that some men lived because of it. He will not call it heroism. He will call it what it was. Airmen doing their jobs under conditions that allowed no perfect choices. History will reduce it to a paragraph, a footnote in the vast arithmetic of the air war over Europe. But among those who were there, the day will never shrink, because on that morning over Germany, at 20,000 feet, machines meant to fall apart refused to do so, and men, bound by training and responsibility, held together just long enough. The guard calls for lights out. The barracks goes dark, and the sky once filled with engines, fire, and impossible flight exists now only in memory.